Morning. How's everybody? Everybody, did someone say airborne? I thought she said, okay. My name is Mark. You'll know that as soon as I mention this speech, but here we go. What else can we say to our loved ones, but we'll try. We knew to expect wishes or responsibilities to carry out, but we never thought they were serious about this one. Many of you have heard it for years about where they wanted to be when they passed on, but we weren't sure it would be possible. Then you found us. You came to us to see if we could in fact carry out the dreams, and our response was, sure. Some people thought we were kidding. Some thought we were scammers. Some thought it would be too expensive, but look around you and see who believed us. I'm Mark Lee, and welcome to our Celestis Memorial Spaceflight Enterprise and Tranquility Memorial Services. Whew. I'm sure one of the team members who helped you to bring this into the realm of reality, I'm one of them actually. I hope I did a good job for you and everyone that you have spoken with. If they have, can you please give us an applause? Sure. I was recruited years ago by Celestis, and after a few launches from here and our New Mexico facility, I was convinced that they in fact knew what they were doing. I've known a few of our better-known passengers for a very, very long time, about 35, 40 years possibly. James Doohan, producer Robert Justman, Nichelle Nichols, Gene and Majel, and Rod Roddenberry, and a few of them better than others. Celestis actually found me while hosting the 40th anniversary Star Trek convention in Seattle. Anybody from Seattle here? Here's one. Longest flight I've ever took in my life. Good gravy. Okay. But then there's people like Arthur C. Clarke, Jimmy's widow, Wendy Doohan, with Jimmy's daughter, Larkin, model designer, Gregory Jean, and a few other participants you may know. I'm happy to see them all make history. Meeting most of you yesterday has convinced me that we are doing a great thing here. We're doing this thing here so you can gain brownie points from your loved ones, coworkers, and you can look incredible in the eyes of your friends, people who didn't believe you, thought we were scammers. But the true glory in all of this is it's actually happening. Positive thoughts, folks, positive thoughts. The history that's being made here will not happen again because it's a one-of-a-kind first. The moon? Deep, deep space? Cool beans. Some of you actually know what that means, right? Yeah, okay. You know, the older people out there, what the heck is cool beans? Okay, our fantastic partners in all of this, specifically ULA, this pretty cool hotel, all of you will be doing what the others are trying to get back to do. ULA are as excited about this as we are. I'm proud of you all. I really am. Big round of applause for yourselves. Some of you have seen me before. Post office walls, I've been telling people a lot, that's the guy you saw. But some of the Celestis staff and contractors you may not know as well. Our space geek, Emily Carney, our office tech guru, Keith, operations goddess, Faith, also people such as, our golden helpers, supervisors, John and Dion Dodonna, and the heart of this organization with her energy and personal touch to your family's journey, Christiana Cole. Now sit back, get ready for a bit of fun, a bit of tears, and a gathering of new friends as we move forward. On behalf of Charles Chafer, Christiana, and the staff and crew of Celestis Memorial Space Flights, allow me to introduce to you our company president and definitely all-around cool guy, Colby Youngblood.
Mark, thank you. As always, a fantastic introduction. So I want to welcome everyone to the Enterprise Flight and the Tranquility Flight launch events. We're, of course, starting it off with the Enterprise Flight Memorial Service right now. We're doing something a little different this time because we're launching 2 memorial space flights on 1 rocket. So we're doing a combined memorial service. So we're starting with the Enterprise flight first. So everyone that I'm looking at right now should be here to be supporting your loved one on the Enterprise flight. As we go through the program in the second part, there'll be a combined portion where the Tranquility flight families will come in and join us as we go through some pretty cool things and get to see Colonel Eileen Collins speak. And then we'll wrap it up with the Tranquility Flight families. You will be invited, as the Enterprise Flight families, you will be invited to stay and watch the Tranquility portion, but you don't have to. But I do recommend everyone come back at 4 p.m. When we do our reception for Colonel Eileen Collins in the back. She's a great person and would love to meet you. So again, I just want to say thank you for all of you for making the trek here. Many of you came from states all over the country, but some of you came from around the world. So Celestis is a global company, and for those of you that made the trek across oceans, we thank you as well. I also want to thank the hundreds or thousands that are watching us live via webcast. Thank you for joining us and sharing this special moment with us. The Enterprise flight is special for many reasons. And the main reason is because your loved one is on it, and we can't forget that. But it's also special because it's our first deep space Voyager mission. It's historic because it's the first commercial mission of its kind. Some of you know this, but some of you may not, but the Enterprise flight has been manifesting passengers for 27 years. So if you think about that, that's pretty impressive, and it's special to us as a company, as I know it's special to you. The genesis of the Enterprise flight started way back in 1997. In Lompoc, California, we were conducting our very first memorial space flight. In fact, it was the world's first memorial space flight. And on that memorial space flight, we had the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, and he was flying. Majel Barrett Roddenberry was in attendance at the launch event, and she was having a conversation with our founder and CEO, Charlie Chafer. And she made Charlie promise her that when it was her time to go, that he would fly her and Gene together to deep space. Now, in 1997, there were no rocket providers that flew to deep space. But Charlie, as an original pioneer of commercial spaceflight, knew that one day it would happen. And folks, that one day is just a few days away. So 27 years later, we're going to have a promise fulfilled, and Charlie will fulfill his promise to Majel, and you will fulfill your promise to your loved one when we send them to deep space. So our next part, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring up John Donna and Mark Lee for a special tribute to reading the names of the participants on board. We'll read the first 80 names.
Now, we're going to preface this with, if any of the names that we share with you today are awkwardly pronounced, thank you for understanding that. We ask for your grace and your forgiveness. We hold all of the participants and their families in the greatest esteem. Enterprise flight participants: Paul Douglas Brose, Anne Brose, Linda Gay Brothers, Gordon Brown, Jean-Pierre Brun, Tori Bruno, Rebecca Bruno, Angela J. Burke, Joffrey Burns, Alan Burns, Carol Grandma Meow Burrows, Martin Caden, Patrick Campbell, Murray William Ian Carter, Bredden Carr, Janet Lee Castle, Aitekin Selick, Donna Jean Chapman, Robert Mark Chapman, Philip Kenyon Champman SCD, Christine Aurelie Chase, Terry Keith Chase, John Andrew Chimenti, Seal I. Choi, Barbara Barrett Clark, Andrew Coleman, Charlotte Ann Cole, Douglas F. Kapala, Herbert Wesley Corbin, Jeremiah Bradley Corner, Stephen J. Codalesi, Timothy Haywood Crawford, Mary Doreen Crozer, Mary Cutler, Georgina Dale Spencer, Hugh Daniel, John Joseph Davy, Giuseppe D. Matola, Raymond DeBoard, Catherine T. Detienne Monks.
Richard W. Addy, Arlene Dubinsky, Robert J. Adunizio, Juan Alana, Enrico Pizzarusso, Don Amora, Roger N. Anderson Sr., Lee Anderson, Rita Anderson, Eduardo Katz, Richard W. Arwood, Jr., Andrew Alferio, James C. Ongst, Den Ayers, Jeffrey Babouche, Jacqueline T. Barclay, Darren A. Barkley, Nicola Maley, Dave Becker, Abbas Babahani, Lou Ann Behringer, Jim Behringer, Edward H. Ahrenspeck, Barbara Best, Ione Bestor, Henry Bestor, bear with me, Vupu Venugopal Barathi, Dr. Christian H. Bernacki, Richard W. H. Bolin, Nancy Jane Stark Bonica, or it should be Bonica, my apologies, Fritz W. Borgstedt, Rosemary Borgstedt, William R. Bowling II, Hugh J. Boyle, Richard Brastat, Charles Robert Bramhall, Dinette N. Bransfield, Stephen Branson, Dr. Catherine Moreno Branson, Richard Breen.
Okay, so now this is my favorite part of our memorial service. This is where we ask the families and friends to come up and say something about your loved one. So we would like to start, and I've got a process for this. I'm going to ask the first family to come speak, and then I'll let the second family aware, and so that you can go ahead and make your way to either my left or my right. So I'll continue to do it. You'll get the feel of it. We're going to start with the family of Adrian Dennis Edmonds. Okay. That's how we're going to start. Okay. We'll move on to the family of Alan Burns. The family of Alan Burns. They will be followed by the family of Andrew Coleman.
I am Patty Burns. My dear husband and best friend, Alan Alexander Burns, passed away in 2019 at 79 from a debilitating form of Parkinsonism. With me today, up here, Alan's son Ian and his brother Richard. Richard is also here to honor the memory of his son, Jeffrey. Also supporting us today is Ian and his family and my sister Debbie. Alan was highly intelligent, earning 3 electrical engineering degrees from Stanford University and an MBA from Santa Clara. At Stanford, he studied topics like space physics and cosmic electrodynamics. His PhD thesis was a result of studying the moon using a pair of radars. In 1968, this added to the knowledge base of understanding the properties and physical nature of the lunar surface. Alan enjoyed travel, his '56 Porsche, hiking, swimming, bicycling, sci-fi books, and cooking. He held an amateur radio license. He often just wore an aloha shirt, shorts, sandals, and sunglasses. His real passion was flying in our Cessna 182 RG. For over 30 years, we flew all over the West, Canada, and Mexico. He also did acrobatics in our Cessna Aerobat 150. Alan was a brilliant scientist, physicist, and inventor, holding 12 patents. One included is the Fox Track glowing hockey puck. He was awarded an Antarctica Service Medal by the National Science Foundation and a Defense Nuclear Agency Meritorious Public Service Award. Over the years at Stanford Research Institute, he led projects involving radars, lasers, avionics, electronics, and applied science. I think he would be enthralled at hitching a ride out to deep space with the Enterprise mission. I miss him terribly. Dick, did you want to say?
Go ahead, Ian. As Patty said, I'm Richard Burns, and father of Jeffrey. Jeffrey became very interested in astronomy and space as a very young boy. We had a home in the mountains of western Colorado at 8,000 feet, and at that altitude, the Milky Way was awe-inspiring for Jeffrey. He was an outstanding student in grammar school and high school, and he was challenged many times by his teachers, especially in science. And his mother started a small group of boys, and she called it Science in the Garage. And she enlisted various retired engineers to come and teach these boys various aspects of engineering. Chuck, the mechanical engineer, and even my brother flew down from Northern California to teach a class in electronics. The best award I think Jeff got was he was challenged by his Latin teacher in grammar school to enter a competition in California to build catapults. And the southern part of the state challenged the northern part of the state. And Jeffrey designed a trebuchet, which is a medieval form of a catapult. And he won the state championship with that trebuchet. I'm sorry I'm breaking up here, but Jeffrey went on to be an outstanding student at Carnegie Mellon University and unfortunately passed away at 19 years old. And he continued in his quest for science with a triple major in electrical engineering, computer science, and quantum physics. He was traveling to school one Sunday morning in his car, and to avoid a slow-moving vehicle, he crashed into a wall, was taken to an emergency room in Pittsburgh, and two inept physicians allowed him to pass away. But Jeffrey was an outstanding young man. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go back. The family of Andrew Coleman, followed by the family of Angela Burke. The family of Angela Burke.
It's bright. Hi, I'm Terry Howard Hughes, and I want to thank very much Celestis for making this happen. And Julia Trumbull, my mom would not be on the spaceship if it wasn't for her letting me know about this. So you're eternally grateful to Celestis and to you. Thank you so much. Well, my mother was Angela J. Burke. She arrived on planet Earth on February 27th, 1923, and she departed planet Earth on August 1st, 2021. Soon to boldly go where no woman has ever gone before. We're counting down to the Enterprise launch. How do you sum up a life in a few words? It is impossible. My mother, Angela J. Burke, was an exceptional woman in all aspects. She was kind, funny, highly intelligent, pragmatic, and friendly. I am so blessed to have had her to the age of 98 and that she was cognizant until the very end. Her last words to me were, "You are the most important person in the world to me, and I love you." She left this world with no regrets, having seen all she wanted to see and done all she wanted to do. How many of us are that lucky at the end of life? My mother arrived in a small town in Austria in 1923. Her mother had 17 siblings, and they slowly immigrated to the United States. My mother and grandmother came to the States when my mom was 4 years old. Her father followed 5 years later. My mother was so grateful for the life she was afforded in the States. She met my father when she was 18 and he was 38. Mom was interested in world events and was intrigued by being with an older crowd. My mom and dad married a year later and stayed married until my father's passing in 1989. My father was a test pilot and became General Clay's public information officer after World War II. My parents moved to Berlin, and my mother worked for the famous Berlin airlift. The years my parents spent in post-World War II Berlin influenced my mother's outlook on life. The city was destroyed and people had nothing. My mother realized that things come and go, and the most important things in life are the people you love. She realized that we need to make the most of each day and be grateful for what we have. My mother loved sharing all of her stories about the people she met and the adventures experienced in post-World War II Berlin. In her retirement, she wrote a series of articles for a periodical about their lives in post-World War II Berlin. While in Berlin, my parents helped many people, no matter their race, religion, or nationality. My father covered the Nuremberg trials for Esquire magazine and was a war correspondent, as well as being involved in the black market, where he was able to find life-saving things like penicillin, food, and coal to give to those less fortunate. Over the years, my parents met many notorious people, which my mother loved. Among them were Jack Ruby, Marina Oswald, Elvis Presley, Marlene Dietrich, Archer Browner, General Halley, Princess Nina Kirkpatrick, and Harry Hoxsey. They attended Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's engagement party. My mother felt like she was blessed to have met all the people and have all the experiences she had. The friends that my parents made while in Berlin stayed lifelong friends. My brother, James Richard Burke, was born in Berlin before they moved back to the States. In the States, my parents settled in Dallas, Texas, where I was born. In the 1970s, my mother wanted to get her college degree, but believe it or not, ladies, she had to have permission, my father, to go back to school. She received her bachelor's and master's degrees from Southern Methodist University in Dallas and her PhD in philosophy from the University of North Texas. Once she received her PhD, she was hired by UNT to teach and run the psychology clinic. She worked there for 17 years and retired at 74. My mother was also instrumental in getting the child car seat law established in Texas. She enjoyed retirement, saying she was living every teenager's dream. She had money, wheels, could stay up as late as she wanted, sleep as late as she wanted, and no one to answer to. She lived this way until she fell ill in 2016 and could no longer live on her own. She still made the most of her life until about the last year. Then she was ready to go. She departed from this planet on August 1st, 2021. I miss her terribly, but I'm so grateful I had the best mom in the world and feel privileged that I was able to be there for the last years of her life. She was my mentor, my greatest advocate, my best friend, and a wonderful example of a strong, independent woman. I am so grateful she will be in space with such highly intelligent people. She loved to philosophize about all things, especially space and time. Just think of the wonderful debates and conversations they will have. She once said about Earthlings, "We are a failed experiment, and they left us long ago seeing we would self-destruct." I love you, Mom, your loving daughter. And I want to say I'm so grateful she will be with all of your loved ones among the stars and the mysteries of space.
The family for Antonio Zuber. The family for Bob Kantu. The family for Brenton Carr will be next.
Hello. I apologize, but I am 100% not prepared. But what can I say about my dad? Bob Kantu. He was an amazing man. I have 2 words for you to kind of describe him. Dad jokes. He was the king of dad jokes, and one that he used to say, and it wasn't really a dad joke, but it was more of he was really corny. He would say, "You've got to be Vulcan kidding me." So, but my dad, that's a picture of us in Canada. We traveled to Canada in 2018 and 2019, and I have some wonderful memories. But he loved space from when he was a young boy. He was enamored with the stars and the skies, and he was an amateur, astronomer. He gave lectures in Charlotte at the Astronomy Club. He was just one of those people who could do everything. He was a Renaissance man. He could cook, he could paint, he loved nature, he could shoot a bow and arrow. I mean, how many people can say that? And actually hit something. But I apologize, I just wasn't prepared for a speech, but I just want you to all know that I'm thankful to be here. I wish I could have told my dad what I had planned for him. Unfortunately, he had pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, you have a little bit of dementia that goes with that as well, sometimes. And so I'd like to think that he would be extremely excited about this, because he would have been an astronaut. He would have. He was just that smart. A little goofy, but he was smart. And I'm just thankful that he's going to be in the presence of all these wonderful people who are also going to be on the Enterprise flight. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That was a good example of why I really enjoy this. You don't have to be prepared, just speak from the heart. The family for Brenton Carr. The family for Carolyn J. Dobson. Followed by the family for Catherine Dechen Monks.
Let's see. Got my notes. Good morning. My name's Frank Dodson. I'm here with my daughter Taylor, and we're also on speaking behalf of my sister Ruth and my nephew Eddie to celebrate the life of my sister Carolyn Dodson. Carolyn was a cherished daughter, sister, aunt, friend. She spent the vast majority of her life in Hialeah, Florida, where she had a successful career in banking, enjoyed many games of tennis, pool, bowling, and was a dedicated caretaker for her family. In 2017, after 5 years spent commuting to and from Florida Atlantic University while also working full-time, Carolyn graduated summa cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Management and Information Systems and Business Analytics at 55 years old. Her commitment to her education and desire to always continue learning and expand her understanding of the world around her was unmatched. Carolyn was a fierce advocate for the people she loved and was always there to help her friends, family, neighbors, and community. She also made it a point to enjoy her life as much as possible. She was intensely passionate about astronomy, Star Trek, Babylon 5, sports, and music. We could not think of a more fitting way for her spirit to live on than in a voyage through deep space. And no one shall be joining other esteemed Star Trek collaborators and space enthusiasts is something that seems so perfect for her. Thanks to Celestis for providing this opportunity.
The family for Catherine Dechen Monks. The family for Charlotte Cole. The family for Chase Shugart. They will be followed by the family for Daniel Leahy. Yes, sir.
Make sure we're all up here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Shugart, and I'm here honoring my son, Chase Shugart. And in his words, Legos, Power Rangers, Back to the Future, Star Wars, Avengers, Pokemon, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and of course, Star Trek. Chase was known for his positive and upbeat attitude, humor, creativity, very easygoing personality, and the ability to make friends with people of all ages and backgrounds and maintain those relationships. He could either listen to someone for hours or alternatively entertain them for hours with his stories and songs. I know he is looking forward to having these long conversations with everybody on board the Enterprise flight for a long time. He died unexpectedly in December of 2020 at the age of 25 from complications related to leukemia. Chase was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, moved to Richmond, Virginia when he was 6 months old, which is where we grew up. In high school, he was admitted to the Interbaccalaureate Art Program, where admittedly his artistic inspirations were science fiction and Cubism. And when I say Cubism, think Legos. In high school, he was also on the track and championship cross-country teams and co-captain in his senior year. He was a leader and inspiration to his teammates. He earned a BS in environmental horticulture, graduating with honors from Montana State University, and then after graduation, started working his career in landscape design. Chase is preceded in death by his mother, Jill, and is survived by his father, me, and his younger brother, Cole, and his many aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. Those who knew Chase would know that he would be and is looking forward to this one last journey on the Memorial space flight, blasting off into deep space and, in his words, embarking on this trek to boldly go where no one has gone before, powered by 1.21 gigawatts, on a journey to a galaxy far, far away where everything is awesome. And he would say, it's morphin' time. Yeah, thank you.
The family for Daniel Leahy. Followed by the family for Daniel Vrabel.
I'm Alex Leahy. My dad, Dan Leahy, was many things. He was a teacher, a father, a son, a loving husband, a brother, a hard worker, and was a very big fan of space. He loved talking and learning about space, and he was also loved the show Star Trek. Before he unexpectedly passed in 2021, he always said he wanted to go to space, and now he finally gets to live out his dream. It can sometimes be hard to think that he could only fulfill this dream by dying, but knowing that a piece of him will always be in space helps a lot. I won't miss my dad internally, but on those really rough days, I know I will be able to look in the sky, in the space, and know that he is there. Thank you.
The family for Daniel Vrabel. Followed by the friend of David Turkle, MD.
Well, I didn't trip coming up here, which is always a good sign. How can I even begin to sum up the life of someone like Dan Vrabel? I can start by telling you that he has no connection to Star Trek. He wasn't a science fiction writer like Ray Bradbury. Dan was a science nonfiction writer who wrote award-winning engineering papers. And while I wouldn't call him famous like Ray, he was well known and respected in his field. I should also mention that while he was not a celebrity like Scotty or Nichelle, anyone who ever met him would agree that he was movie star handsome. But he was more than a pretty face. He received his PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan, and he would surely want me to tell you all, go blue. In addition to the many years of research and the eventual creation of his own company, Dan used his engineering, precision, and problem-solving skills at home. He designed our house, and from plumbing to electrical to woodworking and landscaping, Dan was a handyman, Renaissance man. Whatever he did it well, including sports. He was most passionate about tennis and skiing. Dan was a national ski patrolman for many years. No matter how steep the hill or deep the powder, Dan always made it look effortless. The afternoon I met Dan 56 years ago, I told him I wanted to learn to ski, and he offered to teach me, and teach me he did. Dan was an amateur astronomer, and he had a lifelong fascination with space. Growing up, he closely followed what began as a space race, and he was proud to become one of the many, many engineers whose research continues to make spaceflight possible. He regularly attended space technology conferences where he often presented research papers, several of which received the Outstanding Paper Award. Dan was an amateur astronomer, and he closely followed celestial events, and he never missed an opportunity to view a meteor shower, comet, or eclipse. The only thing he enjoyed more than watching it was photographing it all, and he loved sharing these photos with family and friends. He had so much enthusiasm. He lived a happy, fulfilling life during which he contributed much. Of all his achievements, he was most proud of his two sons, Michael, who was on the stage, and his younger son, Matthew, who is still traveling here. And that brings us to today. Dan died suddenly and unexpectedly. We never discussed where he wanted to spend eternity. But when his family learned of the Celestis Enterprise flight, we could not imagine a more fitting tribute to Dan than to send him off on this journey into the vastness of space. We knew it would bring us great comfort to be able to look up and see him among the stars. This launch would be a spectacular end and a new beginning for a wonderful, much-loved husband, father, and friend. Since his death in December 2021, Dan has become a grandfather twice over. And when we talked to little Emma and her cousin Miles, very newly born cousin Miles, about their grandfather, we will speak of this launch, telling them he will always be with them. No matter where they are, they just have to look up. Thank you.
The friend for David Turkle, MD. All yours.
Good morning, everyone. Alexander Mankus and my other half, Nita. This, too, is an impromptu, and I guess the best way I can describe Dr. David Turkel was the term Renaissance man was used, and I'd like to reiterate that. He was born in 1957, passed away unexpectedly 2021, but I would like everybody to remember, how do you spend that dash of time? And I could tell you he filled it completely. He was an inventor, a pilot, a horseman. He invented the bone marrow aspiration device. He had a seat on the Virgin Galactic. His love of space was, we always discussed multiple things. And being the kind of nutty professor that you always see, like on Back to the Future, that was him. Just imagine that, gentlemen. We would talk about science, stock market, scuba diving, electrical engineering. He was also a graduate of MIT, holds 27 patents. We would go flying in his MD-500 helicopter. I have a pair of night vision goggles of his. I'm going to look at this Enterprise flight after takeoff under it, and if you happen to be next to me, I'll let you look underneath the night vision goggles as well. What I can tell you this, he's sorely missed. He was beyond a friend. He was like a brother to us. The family, both from Indiana and New Jersey, couldn't be here today, but after over 25 years of knowing him, he's touched many lives in many ways, very humble, and I'm honored that our DNA, I didn't know this, that Celestis has the option for a cheek swab, and our DNA, you don't have to pass away to go to space, can be used, replicated, and we're going to accompany him as well on this great mission. Thank you.
The family for Danette Bransfield. Followed by the family for Donna Jean Chapman.
I didn't come prepared as well. This is my beautiful wife. She passed away 2018 unexpectedly. She loved four-wheeling, mudding, motorcycle riding. We go riding around. We were both volunteer firefighters, and after she passed, I retired. What can I say about her? We always told each other we love each other to the stars and back, go further and further. So in memory of her, I thought this would be a great thing by sending her ashes up to deep space. Thank you.
The family for Donna Jean Chapman, followed by the family for Dr. Christine Bernacki.
Good morning. My name is David Cobb, and I am the son of Donna Jean Chapman. My mom was born in Lakewood, Ohio. She grew up out there with her family, her father, Robert, and her mother, Laura. She had two younger brothers, Craig and Edward. And then after she graduated college, she got a degree in secretarial sciences. She started a family out in California, and that's where she had 3 kids. It's myself, Michelle, and Angela. She never left a plan of what to do for her after. So I felt like after she passed in November 15th of 2022, it was hard, but I feel like it was a journey of trying to figure out what to do, what's the thing that she loved the most, or what would respect her. And during the time, I started remembering all these phone call conversations we would have. She would stop mid-conversation of, the stars look so beautiful out, the moon's just so big. You could be in the middle of like, a pretty intense conversation of just, and I would just lose my track. I'm like, I guess I should go outside and go check it out too, And so with her growing up, she used to watch Star Trek with her father, so I felt this was the most memorable way to honor her. And when she passed away with bacterial meningitis and sepsis, it happened so fast. And when she was in the hospital, I happened to play her a song called Stand By Me by B.E. King. And in the verse, it happens says, the moon is the only light we'll see. So it was my mission to make that song come true. And then I was in plan to, do a moon mission. And once this flight opened up, I jumped on it. I felt like this was the way to go. It had a tie to her, and there's also the moon involved on it. She, with her husband, Donna Chapman, she would go to Disneyland and spend many nights there, and she really enjoyed the fireworks. So this is my way of, hopefully she can see the firework coming her way. She was very proud of her family. Like I said, she had 3 kids, 4 grandchildren, 8, great-grandchildren, and she just, it was her world. And the fact that she gave me this world, I'm going to give her the universe. And I was listening to a podcast with Jeff Bezos and Lex Friedman, and he was talking about when he went up with Blue Origin, that it made him feel like he was back in his mother's womb of hitting zero gravity. And that made me realize, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send my mom in that that journey too. But this is an improv, so I'm just trying to pull it all out. But through my world of traveling, touring with multi-platinum bands like Alien Ant Farm and POD, she got to see the world through my eyes. And she was always taking pictures. When I found out after she passed away, she was always the photographer in these pictures. And so it's for me to show her the world and take these pictures, all that. She enjoyed it probably just as much as I did. And now she's going to be able to see the world from a different perspective. But yeah, thank you very much.
Well done. Well done. Thanks for being here. The family for Dr. Christine Bernacki. Followed by Guy Raymond Pignolet.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Bernacki, Christine Bernacki's son. My brother couldn't make it today, Scott, and her sister, Carolyn Flint, were the ones who made this possible. And this is her granddaughter, Emma, who she unfortunately never had the pleasure of meeting. My mother passed away in 2012 from an aggressive form of leukemia. But after hearing the stories today, she will get along well with everybody up there. She was a professor, scientist, biologist, nutritionist, and they will have a lot to talk about. So she was a Trekkie. That's how we ended up here. And so one of her last wishes to me was she had actually seen a program on the news with about James Doohan's ashes, otherwise known as Scotty, going to be being sent up into space. And she told me, this is what I would like you to do for me. And she saw my face, which was, are you serious? And she said, listen, she made me promise, I am serious, this is what I would like. So fast forward, after 10 years, I was actually sitting in my office in October of 2022, and I read an article about William Shatner going to space, and he was talking about how that was, and then I heard the voice in my head that you promised. So I did a quick search. I found Celestis. I had 5 days to make it happen. That was the cutoff. And I called my brother and my aunt And they said, absolutely, let's make it happen. And it was her and divine intervention, as obviously Star Trek, again, was her favorite show, having the cast and crew on the aboard the rocket. So how my children are going to meet her and talk to her is they'll be able to look up at the stars and say hi to Bachi, is how she would want to be called. But if she was here today, what she would say is, "It's about time, son. Beam me up, Scotty."
I told my high school French teacher that I would never use French, but I wanted to take a shot, and I'd like to introduce Guy Pignolet. Hopefully I did my French teacher proud. He will be speaking for General Leon Raymond de Bull.
Well, we are all here. Fly with my friend, General French Air Force, Leon Raymond de Bull. He's a shy guy, but he was very active in the development and supporting, especially youth and education. And I'm glad to be here today because as a human, in fact, we all share about, I think, 2% of our DNA. So I'm here to represent also my country, which is, I call Planet Reunion. It's an island with 1 million people, which is part of France, part of Europe, part of the world. But now I say we are all part of the solar system. We are all Solarians. We are citizens of the solar system. And I'm glad to carry with my DNA the DNA of so many people and to accompany my friend, General de Bull. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our cellist, Lily Elliott. She will now play the Star Trek theme. I'd like to call up the family for Gordon Brown. Followed by the family of Henry and Ian Bester.
Good morning. My name is Richard Brown. I'm Gordon's younger brother. He's got another younger brother that wasn't able to make it today. I was listening to all these great words from all the people that have spoken this morning, and it made me think about how all of us, when we're little children and first becoming aware of the world around us, we at some point go outside and we look up at the sky and we see the stars sparkling in the night. And it makes us all wonder, what's out there? There's got to be something. It's not just us. There's something out there. And the great thing is all these people that are going on this flight are gonna find out what's out there. My brother Gordon was born in 1947. This positioned him perfectly for the coming space age. When he was 10 years old, the Russians launched the Sputnik satellite. And when he was 14, Yuri Gagarin was launched into space. Then the Americans kicked into high gear, and Gordon was in ecstasy. Gordon and I shared a lot of interests, including science fiction and books and movies, and outer space and space travel, to name a few. One of our early shared experiences was going to see a 1950s era science fiction movie, Forbidden Planet, that became a favorite for both of us. I recommend it highly to any of you that haven't seen it. It starred Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, and Leslie Nielsen, who went on to great fame later. It became a favorite for both of us. It revolved around, naturally, a journey to another planet. Gordon was so interested in space travel and the space program that he saved his money and bought a good telescope with which to stare into space. It stood about 5 feet tall. It had a tripod, a smaller spotting scope mounted next to the main telescope barrel, and an attachment that allowed him to project the image of the sun onto a white metal plate so he could observe a solar eclipse without staring at the sun. In short, it was the real deal. Just as an aside, I didn't save money like my brother did, so I thought the telescope was cool, and I asked for one for my parents at Christmas the next year. And I ended up with a little handheld telescope this long that I could barely see across the street with. But Gordon let me look through his telescope, so I benefited from that. When he was in his mid-teens, he started making small cardboard tube rockets and shooting them off in the backyard. He then built a 5-foot-tall metal rocket, but was never able to find a suitable place to launch it, so it still exists at his house. He even managed to order a transcript of John Glenn's conversations with NASA Control Center during his historic flight around the Earth. In short, outer space and space travel were very important to him. Gordon lived in Altamont Springs, just north of Orlando, and this offered him the ideal location to observe rocket launches from Cape Canaveral. He would watch the initial part of the launch on the television and then walk out in his front yard and observe the rocket shooting through the sky to the east. On one occasion, a friend who lived in Brevard County got him tickets for a special Kennedy Space Center tour that was provided by NASA, and my wife and I got to tour with Gordon and his wife, Lynn. What an amazing experience, but not, I expect, as amazing as the Celestis launch is going to be. When Gordon died and we learned about Celestis at the funeral home, his wife, Lynn, my daughter, and I instantly knew that this was something Gordon would have loved. We thank Celestis so much for making this possible and making it available to my brother and all of your relatives. In his new home, he's gonna love things up there. And by the way, his wife, Lynn, and my daughter, Kirsten, who've been together through all this, are here today also. But thank you, Celestis, and thank you all of you for being here and being part of this whole thing. This is going to be wonderful.
The family for Henry and Ione Bester, followed by the family for Horst Udo Peterson.
Hi, I'm here representing my parents, Henry and Ione Bester, and on behalf of my brothers and sisters as well. Henry Bester was drafted off the farm when he was 18, and when he returned from the occupational army in Japan, he met my mother, and it was love at first sight. They married within a year, and my father was able to use the GI Bill to go to the University of Illinois, where he finished his aeronautical engineering degree in 2 years. After that, he worked for some defense contractors, designing such aircraft as the Voodoo and the Phantom and the Demon. And then he started working in the space program very early on. I remember seeing a prototype for the first Mercury capsule in about 1956. In December of 1959, we moved to Cocoa Beach because the space race was on, and he worked on all of the manned space flights and unmanned until the beginning of the space shuttle. He was an amateur pilot, he was a good man, he was a strong man, and as an engineer, he always said the first thing that he had to think of was what could go wrong, and particularly with the manned space flights, he was concerned about that, and you work back from that. He was able to attend one of the launch recovery missions that featured Gus Grissom. He loved that, but what he really would have loved is this. So, Dad, this is for you.
The family for Horst Udo Peterson. Followed by the family of James Ongst.
Okay. There are so many things that I would love to say and tell you about Dad. Whether riding his bicycle across the country, telemark skiing mountains around the world, or working at improving the way automotive parts were designed and manufactured, he would tackle things with gusto. His curiosity about the world, his inventive spirit, the go big or go home way in which he would approach his life, the way he loved his family beyond anything. In these few minutes, it would be impossible to convey them all. So instead, I am going to tell you about how grateful and proud we are for him to be part of this mission, the first of its kind. So representative of the kind of person he was. How fitting for a father who pored over National Geographic's Our Universe with his kids and often took the family stargazing and satellite counting on summer nights at the cottage. He would have thought this opportunity, and I can hear his voice now, he would think it would be awesome. When the scarring from his brain hemorrhage led to dementia, he often talked about what he called the New World. When we showed him the comet Neowise through a telescope, he watched in awe and told us he was going to go up there to the New World one day, and it was going to be awesome. Now, thanks to Celestis, we can send him towards that new world as passenger 99. Somehow I don't think that this passenger number is a coincidence at all. 99, which happens to have been his favorite card game, which our family, who is here with me today, spent countless hours playing together at our family cottage. So many laughs and so much love. Although we miss your physical presence every day, Dad, you are part of our every day and our every adventure, and we hope to have a lot of them together. We love you so much. To the rest of the families on the Enterprise mission, we are so happy that he'll be in such good company. I hope your loved ones are ready for some great stories, because he's going to tell them, and he's going to tell them all. But I can tell that they're going to have many great stories to tell him too, and they're going to be talking about powder and skiing and space and all sorts of things. He's going to love it. Thank you so much, and looking forward to an amazing weekend with all of you.
The family for James Ongst, followed by the family for James Marsh.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Everybody up? Okay. Thank you all very much for being here, especially my family and friends. And thank you to Celestis and ULA And to the Radisson, too. This is a wonderful celebration. I'm Susan Ongst, and I'm the proud sister of Jim Ongst. Jim was a pioneer and a hero. Plus, he was a lot of fun to grow up with and be around. He was the son of John Ongst Sr. and Jeanette Griskevich Andrews, pioneers and heroes in their own rights. Jim, our brother John, and I were all born between 1957 and 1960. So that was the age of the space race, as many other people have noted. And also three kids in 4 years. We were very close. John and I started blaming our little brother Jim for all kinds of stuff the day he came home from the hospital. Mom said, "Who screwed up the TV?" And me and John just pointed to the crib and said he did. Jim had a tough road ahead of him. Our dad was a combat naval aviator in Korea and an industrial engineer. He introduced us to our first telescope on top of our two-story home. He got a window open and said, "Don't tell your mom, but we're going to go out on the roof." And he'd take a telescope out there. We were probably 6, 5, and 4. And we just were fascinated by the moon. And he'd point out the North Star. And whenever you're lost, look for the North Star and how it made the Big Dipper. And then how you found the Little Dipper. And why Orion's belt was there. And that curiosity just led to a lifetime of all of us really being fascinated with the cosmos. Our brother John joined the Navy while I served in the Air Force. Jim's work began at Hardee's, flipping hamburgers. But his interest in computer science led him to a bachelor's degree at the University of West Florida. And then he was accepted into a work-study program for Lockheed Martin, where he began software engineering on their different rockets. In 1990, John and I were both deployed for Desert Storm. I was leading a combat mission on the ground, and John was aboard the naval carrier Saratoga in the Persian Gulf. Jim was working on the Patriot missile back here in Orlando, software programming it when it deployed to protect our troops from incoming Scud missiles. So I'd see, a Scud missile coming in, and then Jim's Patriot missile would go smash it to smithereens. I'm going, that's good for a little bro. Little bro did good. And then John's missiles were he was shooting the T-LAMs off the aircraft carrier, and they were blowing up all kinds of stuff in front of me. I'm going, these two have the easiest jobs. I'm the one on the ground here, but they helped where they could. It was just another adventure for this family of heroes. After Jim's pioneering work at Lockheed Martin, he became an international software engineer and consultant. And then he got his master's degree along the way in computer resources information. The thing he was most proud of, though, he was most proud of his daughter, Hannah, who's the love of his life. Couldn't be here this time, but will be here in March when we shoot Jim into orbit. He was very proud about being an Eagle Scout, and it's something he always included on his resume. For Hannah had to be the most patient little baby of all time because me and Jim didn't know anything about babies, and we're trying to put her diapers on, and she's laughing and just saying, do what you need to do. And she was just wonderful. Growing up, she's 26 now. And Jim opened up the world of the cosmos to Hannah the same way. Got the telescope out when she was 3 years old, got her looking through it, and now she's got a lifelong fascination with the universe too. Thank you again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for honoring my brother Jim.
The family for James Marsh.
Okay. My dad, James Marsh, was born in Baltimore, Maryland on November 27, 1936, the firstborn of Harry and Elizabeth Marsh's 9 children. He grew up in the Ohio Valley, graduated from Warren Consolidated High School, and earned his bachelor's degree in physics at Marietta College. He went on to earn a PhD at the Johns Hopkins University and also studied at Oxford. He then moved to Pensacola, Florida to accept a job teaching physics at the then fledgling University of West Florida. He remained a physics professor for roughly 38 years until his retirement, and he was named Professor Emeritus in 2008. His physics work involved holograms, lasers, optics, and quantum mechanics. He molded many minds in the classrooms and was an iconic figure on campus around Pensacola at large. He was known for his beard, Greek sailor's cap, boots, leather jacket, motorcycle, and cigar, and his brilliant mind. Jim was a man who wore many hats, both literally and figuratively. In college, he was a radio DJ and claimed to be the first person to play Elvis on his radio station in the 1950s. He played with the Wheeling Symphony. He rode on a motorcycle, often as his daily driver, but also on cross-country motorcycle trips, which he documented in a memoir he titled 20,000 Miles in the Saddle. He performed the Pensacola International Folk Dancers Group. He could be seen dancing at the Greek Festival nearly every year and at various festivals along the Gulf Coast. He played guitar with the Dogwood Dulcimer Association and the ukulele group at Blues Angels Music. He carried a book to read with him everywhere he went and leaves behind a massive library of titles on physics, of course, religion, war, art, sailing, baking, and probably anything else you can think of. He was talented at drawing, photography, cooking, and baking. He loved being a daddy, and when he went to all the recitals, ball games, school plays, and competitions. Then he loved being a papa, and he went on to do all those things again. His unique influence touched more lives than we can even know, and he will be missed fiercely, but his legend and legacy of sayings, stories, and quirks will live on for many years to come. Thanks.
I'd like to bring John to Donna and Mark Lee back up to read the next 80 participants of the Enterprise flight.
The Enterprise flight participants: Colin Stewart Lindsay Kie, DeForest Kelly, John F. Kennedy. I'm not sure if that's the same one. It is. There we go. Francis Joseph Klein, Uwe Kluvetak, E. Scott Knight, Gloria Rosalind Nolan, Jason Michael Knox, Peter Knox, Murray George Knudsen, John T. Kumin, Robert W. Kopp, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, Michael Kovacic, Sharon Kruger, Bernard Cutter, Michael Logan Lampton, Joseph John LaRose, Linda Sue Lawson, Daniel Kenneth Thomas Leahy, Mark B. Lee, Mark Dean Lefebvre, Christina Lehman, Ryan Leto, Victoria Leto, Daniel Lent, Yu Chong Lee, Mark Long, Iris Ann Lubitz, Alea Kala Al Dale Ivan Mai, Kathleen Mansfield, James Stephen Marsh, John William Matthews, Tony McCoy and family, Eric McCracken, Michael Dennis McKinney Sr., Alexander Menkes, McKenna Abbott Miller, Michael Edwin Miller, Steve Minson, Ken Moses.
Just quickly, just for folks that are not aware, you may hear some names that you may have heard before, some of our notorieties. You're not doing a double take. They are who you think they are, okay? Carolyn J. Dodson, Eric Donaldson, James M. Dewin, Wendy Dewin, Nathan Doolin, Joseph M. Dorbier, Curtis Ray Doris, Arlene Dubinsky, Adrian Dennis Edmonds, Joanne Elizabeth Egley, Edward Howard Aaron Speck, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Simon Kieran Eller, Candace Barry Evans, Larry Kyle Forrest, Ursula G. Fretz, David George Gardner, Francis X. Gillis, Bruce Allen Gilmore, Annie Hunter Gladden, James J. Goodwin II, Ryan Christopher Green, Gerald Gregorek, Carol Hamilton, Frank G. Harrison, John F. Hildebrand, or should I say Hillenbrand to correct, Jack Norman Hoffman, USMA, 1945, Verrill Hoffman, Joanne Holder, Hong Gill, Mark Hopkins, Michael Howell, Edwardio Alex Alejandro Irizarry Jr., Thomas Joseph Isula, George Jean, Kyle Johnson, Richard F. Jocelyn, Robert H. Justman, Luis Claiborne Kaish, Joseph E. Katz.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to bring the family of Jeremiah Corner up next. The family for Jeremiah Corner. The family for Joanne Holder. Followed by the family of Mary and Myron Cutler.
Hi, I'm Joe Cassidy. I have my bonus sister, Laura Esslinger, here today with me to tell you about my mom, Joanne Holder. I'm going to try to make it through this. I've been really excited to hear all the other stories shared by the families that are going to be accompanying Mom on this flight. The story that I think it's so similar to ours. The two words that I would use to describe my mom are love and inspiration. She was born in 1937 in a small town in Indiana. So similar to many of the other folks, right around the time Sputnik was launching and we began to get into the space age, she was a young mom of me. And I can remember how she just started me out as a toddler in the Mercury program, sitting me down in front of the TV, watching the launches She was so inspired when President Kennedy gave his speech at Rice University, and that passion that she had just continued throughout my life. It was the inspiration for me to go on to Purdue University. Boiler up! We've heard Michigan and Illinois, so I had to get Purdue. And so I got my master's from Purdue in aeronautics and astronautics, got involved in the program, and Mom was there every step of the way, backing me up. So excited about it all. When we got to the point after Apollo, and we changed direction and went to the shuttle program, she had launch passes and saw at least a dozen shuttle launches, and even she and my stepdad John then decided to move down here, bought a condo up in Titusville just up the road, and you could look out their back window and watch the launches. And we watched many, many launches just right out the window there. She was passionate about the space program. She was passionate about Purdue sports, and she was also a wonderful photographer, and she won some award-winning awards for her beach photography. She and I had talked, obviously, throughout this journey about going into space someday. I often say, if my mom had been born just a few years later, she thought it was so neat that when we got to the shuttle program, all of a sudden you started seeing the women astronauts. And it's really, really exciting that we have Eileen Collins here to talk to this afternoon. But I think my mom might have been one of them if she'd have been born just maybe 15 years later. But when she passed in 2019, I contacted Celestis the next day. I booked her on the Enterprise flight because I wanted her to go to deep space. And it was amazing that, and we didn't even know that at the time, which rocket we'd be launching on, but it turned out to be the Vulcan. And our company makes the upper stage engines on the Centaur. So I feel blessed to be able to give my mom that ride. Thank you.
The family for Mary and Myron Cutler. And I apologize, I couldn't put an aisle in there. We'll be followed by the family for Nicholas Jeffrey Rand.
My name is Myron Cutler. I'm here with members of my family, at least one of them anyway, Lucas. I don't know where he is. And we're here to honor Mary Cutler and to celebrate her love for and to continue on to the next phase of her journey. Mary was born, raised, and educated in Bristol, Connecticut. She was surrounded by her loving family, which is John Cope and Eloise Fries, and her younger sisters, Barbara and Susanna. She worked as an accountant in Hartford following her education, and during her free time, she enjoyed playing the piano, playing golf, and traveling. One day, her doorbell rang, initiating a friendship to our marriage on May 2nd, 1953. Together, we enjoyed the births of our two children, John and Deborah. and buying a house in Florida while I worked at Martin Orlando on the lacrosse missile. And then we moved back to Connecticut for my work at United Technologies on the lunar module, the guidance system. And then our purchase of a house, our condominium unit in Florida at the Inlet Condominium in New Smyrna Beach for retirement. Many years ago, Mary and I traveled to Europe to visit some loving relatives. While in Europe, we heard about this outfit called Celestis and thought it might be interesting. And since Mary loved new adventures, she decided to take a trip into space would be a good opportunity to extend a hand of love to the whole world. Mary had supported our life's activities wherever they took us, and after 68 years, 6 months, and 24 days, she passed peacefully. Mary loved everyone, and she will continue to provide her example of love for those she left behind. Mary loved everyone that is here today, and she will love all of the people of the earth. And this is a picture of Mary today. This is when she was younger. Thank you.
The family for Nicholas Jeffrey Rand. Followed by the family of Nolan Walborn. Family of Nolan Walborn. We got it? Okay.
I can still say good morning, but barely. I am Dr. Nolan R. Walborn's baby sister, and am accompanied today by our brother David and my husband Robert. On this, our late mother's birthday, I will share extracts of the tribute that the Space Telescope Science Institute, shortened to STSCI, posted on their website. And I quote, STSCI astronomer Dr. Nolan Walborn passed away on the morning of February 22nd, 2018. The astronomy community lost an internationally recognized scientific leader and an inspirational colleague. Nolan pioneered the field of stellar spectroscopy of massive stars with several major discoveries. His passion for studying the brightest nearby stars in the universe, combined with his passion for sharing scientific knowledge with peers, had a major impact on the astronomical community over several decades. Nolan was present at the founding of the Institute in the early 1980s and helped draft the proposal to NASA to manage the STSCI on the Johns Hopkins University campus. After Hubble's 1990 launch, Nolan established a long-standing legacy for all Hubble spectrographs and was instrumental in the Institute's involvement in promoting the James Webb Space Telescope. And haven't we all been amazed by the images from that instrument? Nolan unfailingly had the best interest of both the science and the workings of the Hubble at heart, said John Deebs, STSCI team lead. As a manager, I often observed him being supportive of all my team members, from the newest hire to the more senior staff. I think he certainly took our spirit of equity to heart. Author on 214 refereed publications, Nolan was best known for his comprehensive work on the 30 Doradus region in the Large Magellanic Cloud, as well as Eta Carinae. Nolan was a towering figure in the community of researchers devoted to studying early type stars. His familiarity with the literature and encyclopedic powers of recall were legendary, said Alex Fullerton, instrument team lead. He particularly cultivated personal connections with the astronomical community in South America, which includes some of his closest collaborations, and he was especially committed to seeing astronomy flourish there. As an aside, my siblings and I were raised in Argentina and became fully bilingual. His colleagues, as well as audiences throughout the Hispanic world, were in awe of his flawless Spanish. The picture shows him lecturing in Argentina in Spanish. Another colleague said that Nolan was very keen on having fun, as well as interacting scientifically at astronomical conferences. His biggest joy at conferences, she said, was to dance the Macarena. He also taught the dance to many conference attendees over the years. Sadly, no image of him on the dance floor was made available to us. In the words of the editor of the Magellanic Clouds newsletter, Nolan's wisdom, infinite memory, and frank and loyal character will be sorely missed. All of his colleagues agree that Nolan Walborn's career was brilliant, far-reaching, and consequential. In other words, stellar. End quote. Thank you.
The family for Oriol Fernandez y Mosul. The family for Philip K. Chapman. Followed by the family for Philip Simmons. Hi, Maria.
Hi, everybody. My name's Maria, and I was married to Phil Chapman for 40 years. As you can see from his outfit, he was an Apollo astronaut. He was the mission scientist for the third Apollo landing on the moon, commanded by Al Shepard, who was actually his boss at the time. But being a minor public figure, his career is pretty well documented, and you can find out more than you ever wanted to know about his career. So I'd like to take the next few minutes telling you something about Phil the person. Phil was born in Australia. He was the 7th generation of Australians, I should say now, white Australians, because since then there's been so much immigration and movement that being the 7th generation of white Australians is now in history. That'll never occur again. So what does a 12-year-old Australian boy do to become an American astronaut? Because in those days, there was only Russia, which he had no chance at all, and the US that had a space program. He took every opportunity to make himself better qualified. So when it was time for national service required, he joined the Air Force because they would teach him to fly. And then he had an opportunity to spend a winter in Antarctica. This was before we had McMurdo Station, which is actually a town in Antarctica. The Australians had Mawson, which had one building, and because he was a radio astronomer, he had to be 50 miles away for the photographs to turn out right. He was in a two-man station. He was, well, their tent blew away in one of the Antarctic storms, and all their food, too. So the next day, when the storm blew over, they went out onto the sea ice to look for their food, which was in cans, And they found as many as they were able to in one trek and carried it back. But they never found their tent, their Arctic tent. So they took one of the big 5-foot by 4-foot packing grates that their tractor came in, guyed that down, and lived in it over the winter. And when they weren't working, working means one morning it took them 8 hours to get their single little motor going, because you pour in a little kerosene, a little gasoline, and, it took them forever to unfreeze it so that they could have dinner. And since they picked up all the cans from the ice, the Antarctic snow is like sand. Antarctica is a desert. We think of sand as snow as this soft, mushy stuff. You make snowballs. Antarctic snow is like sand. And this sand polished off all the labels on their cans. So they never knew what dinner was. He said one day they were surprised to be introduced to nouvelle cuisine by sheer chance, because the dinner was chip beef with peaches. And one of his visiting partners, he was in this two-man base by himself, and they would send in various experts to do their work. One of his visiting experts was a climatologist, and they had instruments screwed into steel bars in various places to take the temperature. This guy was not trained to live in Antarctic conditions. Phil had all of 2 weeks training to go to Antarctica. By the way, his job was dog handler. That was how high up it was, dog handler. That was when he was not doing physics. Anyway, this climatologist, one day, they had guide wires from post to post, just in case a storm came up, you still had some guide to make it back to their packing crate. So this guy went out, held onto the ropes, went to his post with a little temperature gauge that he was checking, and he saw that the needle in it, in those days it was non-digital, everything was mechanical, the little gauge that showed what the temperature was frozen to one spot. So he knew that was not accurate, and he knew he only had 2 weeks in Antarctica, so he couldn't miss any data sets. So this idiot decided to lick it. His tongue got frozen to the instrument. There he was by himself, away from the crate, no way to call Phil. So he stood there for, I think, an hour. Phil was sitting in the packing crate thinking, boy, that's a long time for a bathroom break, So he went to look for him and followed this wire, and there's this guy frozen to this instrument. Well, fortunately, Phil, being a gadgeteer, had his Swiss Army knife. So he unscrewed the instrument from the post. The guy held on to this thing, and they went back to their packing crate so that the guy could lean down to their little stove and hope they will defrost. So the guy went home with, 20 below, 25 below, 30 below, 60, 25, 36. So that was Phil, gadgeteer. Star Trek. I have to tell you Phil's Star Trek story. Phil was in the program in the 60s when the old Star Trek came out with William Shatner. And the astronauts were very, very busy training, or as they say, being tortured, because the trainers want to make sure they knew what to do. So they thought up all kinds of tricks. Like there was the one in the Dilbert Dunker, where you put on your spacesuit, So you're completely encased, and it's pressurized, so you're like the Michelin man, and you're in this thing on a slope into a pool. It would slide down the slope and then turn over. So there you are in your spacesuit in a metal cage, upside down, underwater. And the challenge was to at least get your helmet off so that you can deflate enough to squeeze out of this metal cage and pop up to be rescued by swimmers. And of course, the trainers do things like screw up the things so you can't get your helmet off, put a hole in your glove so it fills up with water. So the astronauts were busy doing this all day, every day. But when it came to Thursday, 4 o'clock, which was when Star Trek was on, they would all insist on watching Star Trek. They said to their boss, Alan Shepard, "This is not entertainment, Alan. This is science training." No, they were serious. They would all gather around and watch, in those days, little TV, and they kept watching really carefully. They'd even take notes, hoping that Scotty, Jimmy, would explain how warp drive worked. And then they would have debates afterwards on how the transporter would work and how Nichelle Uhuru did intergalactic instantaneous communication. So now that we know about quantum entanglement and a true scientific, I don't think it's even a theory anymore. Phil, who was 85 years old when he first read this, immediately called up his astronaut friends and said, "That's how Uhuru did it. That's how Uhuru did it." So Phil, like all pilots, loved driving anything, of course, cars. He would take an alternate route home just to see what was new. You know, you go home every day, he would drive around the neighborhood just to have a little fun in the car. And he was an equal opportunity pilot. He was not too proud to drive light airplanes, which he did to explore the Arctic. One more side story, and I promise I'll quit. One day, we were at a dinner party. The host was a Colonel Air Force flight surgeon. His wife was Ecuadorian, and they were telling the story of how he was diving for the Air Force in one of the high Ecuadorian lakes for the Aztec gold, legend has that they threw all their gold into this lake so that the conquistadors won't get it. So the host was diving to look for this gold. On the way home from this dinner party, Phil looks at me and says, "I know a lake where there's gold." I'm like, "We've been married for 20 years and you're just telling me this now? I mean, why? Let's go get it." So he organized another expedition to Antarctica to look for this gold. And of course, we needed a cover story. In, I forget which year, Luis Alvarez and his son, both Nobel laureate scientists, postulated that the event that killed the dinosaurs was a big asteroid that hit the Earth. We know now that to be true, but in those days we didn't know. So the cover story for this big expedition to Antarctica was that Antarctica at that time is much, much more pristine than it is now. We were going to look for the KT layer, everywhere on Earth, if you dig down, there's a black line everywhere on Earth. It's called the KT layer. Before that, you find dinosaurs. After that, none. And the scientists have tested that the KT layer contained elements that come from asteroids. So that was our cover story. We were a scientific expedition to this lake. So that's Phil's adventure. Okay, last story. Back to, would I be here dressed like this if we found gold? Would I be driving a rented car? Would I have to fly in? Anyway, last story. Phil loved driving anything, as I said, cars, supersonic airplanes, light airplanes, boats. One day we're in the supermarket and he sees these electronic carts for disabled people. He wanted to drive it. He so enjoyed going up and down the aisles, backing up, trying to get into the little spaces. And when the guys came to say, we'll put it away for you, sir, he says, no, I'll park it. So that was Phil. But he wasn't just a nerd. His favorite poem was Tennyson's Ulysses because it so expressed his view of the world. That includes the quote that says, to strive to find and not to yield. I think that's the fundamental attitude behind all explorers. All our loved ones, every one, is a space explorer who has that attitude. Another part of that poem is to sail beyond the sunset. They will literally be beyond the sunset forever, forever. Thank you so much for accompanying Phil on this forever journey. He would love the conversation, but more so, he would love the audience to tell his stories.
Thank you, Maria. The family for Philip Simmons. Followed by the family for Richard Jocelyn.
Hello, everyone. I met the first love of my life, Philip Lee Simmons, my last year in college in Mississippi. Phil was recovering from a divorce, and from that marriage, he has 2 children, Bradley and Ginger, who both live in Tennessee now with their own families. After knowing him for a few weeks, I somehow convinced him, a lifelong Southerner, to come back with me to Pennsylvania, where I grew up, which was a difficult task. We had a very happy marriage, doing some traveling and enjoying new adventures together, until he went to his doctor because of some chest pain, and a blood test showed a white cell count of more than 10 times the normal value. Having a degree in medical technology, I suffered through the worst weekend of my life, waiting for the oncologist's diagnosis of leukemia. Informed that he had only 3 years to live, God blessed us with 10 years before a bone marrow transplant was our only option left. Having no natural brothers or sisters, we could only do a fetal transplant, which failed. And just like that, my first love was gone. Phil was an avid science fiction lover and would often joke after his diagnosis that he was waiting for the aliens to come fix his disease. And he really believed that. So after 12 years of waiting, I am thrilled that he will finally get his chance to meet his aliens as he travels through space. I had another happy marriage, but losing my second husband, Stephen Penn, to a sudden heart attack. I met the last love of my life, Brian Hood, and we were recently married. He is graciously standing beside me, supporting me lovingly, as I say my final goodbye to Phil. God has blessed me 3 times with the important men in my life. I'm very thankful. I can only imagine the adventure you are about to embark upon, Phil. And I thank Celestis for allowing us to have this kind of opportunity, a lifelong dream, really. So fly, fly to the stars, my love.
The family for Richard Jocelyn.
Hi, I'm Ginger Bryant, Rick's wife and partner. Our family and friends are watching virtually. He lived a full life, and I've heard Renaissance man many times, or woman, whether it was search and rescue or cooking a 5-course dinner for 12, or his pharmacy tech degree in his 50s, who knows. But I'm going to focus my remarks just on his connection to this flight. Rick was born in 1955 and came of age during the space race. His 89-year-old mom, who I just saw in Oklahoma and who will watch from home, tells me that he watched Star Trek so many times she still remembers the episodes. He was one of the first in line at the Star Trek Experience in Las Vegas in 1998 when it opened. But his excitement wasn't for the rush of flight. His ability to get motion sick at just about anything would not have made a good astronaut. For him, it was about the wonder of space and the possibility of other worlds. So whether it's Firefly or Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, the DVDs are on the shelf. He served in the Air Force, specializing in communications, which included placing Cat5 cables in the early space shuttles. His last Air Force posting was in Mountain View, California, tracking satellites from the Blue Cube. And then he went to Lockheed, so he might have bumped into your family there. When he met me in 1998, he found a kindred spirit willing to watch the NASA channel on TV and get up in the middle of the night for launches and rover landings. And I am so excited this launches at night because we always wanted to come to see a night launch. A friend with really great connections at Space Center Houston got us a private Level 9 tour. So we saw the pool, and we got to see and sit in the chairs at the Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo mission control on the ground floor. I wanted something special after his sudden death 11 years ago at the age of 57, and I found Celestis. So Rick went up on the Centennial flight in 2013 from New Mexico, and Sunjammer was going to be the first deep space mission. So I signed up as soon as I got home. That was scrubbed, so I've been waiting 10 years for today. His passing followed the retirement of the Space Shuttle program, and contributions in his name helped fund Independence Plaza. If you have not been there, I highly recommend going. NASA 905, which is the 747 ferry, is there with Independence, who never flew in space but was integral to the mission. It is the only space shuttle you can actually walk in. So this will be a more amazing space adventure for Rick, and I know he will be grinning all the way up and never imagined he would be in space for eternity with his Star Trek buddies. Thanks.
We'll now play The Planets, Mars, by Gustav Holst. I'd like to bring Mark B. Lee and John Dodonna back up on stage to recite the final names of the Enterprise flight participants.
Jay Rubin, Bernadette Salter, Keaton Sayes, Richard James Skea Jr., David Neal Sennett, Susan Sonfeld, Melvin Schutz, William H. Settle IV, William Jefferson Shaw, Orrin Weichi Shaw, Chase Jefferson Shugart, Stephen K. Simmons, Philip L. Simmons, Aaron Simonton, Christopher Pal Smigelski, John Strong Macaulay Smith, Jerry Smith, Alfred Snyder, Patricia Snyder, Clarence E. Snyder, Jr., Sidney Dale Sorensen, Jr., Peter Sotiropoulos Tunn, Robert S. South, Wayne C. Spratford, Randall Standish, Brian Martin Stangl, Michael Stewart, Patrick Michael Stoddard, Marjorie Malcolm Streeter, Daniel Nicholas Teichman, Mitchell Thomas, James Todd, Brandon Elliott Toe, Eileen Troutman, James S. Treffel, Douglas Hunt Trumbull, Julia Trumbull, David Turkle, M.D., Tama Wiamera, Daniel Leroy Vrabel, Venugopal Rao Vupu, Dr. Nolan R. Walborn, George Washington, David Webb, Lillian Webb, Mary C. Wright. Wait.
Oriol Fernandez E. Masul, Patrick James Murray, Ingrid Murray, Thomas Morrell, Bert Nance, Grace Jane Nelson, Nichelle Nichols, Mary Ann Rasuko Nishasaki, Brian O'Neill, Joseph Adam Orzo, Sue Oshida, John Otterman, Albert H. Owens, Bob Kantu, Theodore N. Parker, Elizabeth A. Paulus, Gerald E. Paulus, Douglas Arthur Perinaud, Horst Udo Peterson, Gilbert Louis Pico, Guy Raymond Pignole, David Allen Pelleggi, Matthew James Pingree, Anne Pizzarusso, Enrica Pizzarusso, Brian Penn, or Pone, my apologies, Christopher Robert Pontes, John A. Purdy, Lawrence James Rabb, Nicholas Jeffrey Rand, Jonathan David Ray, Bailey Ray, James Reed, John Laverne Regner, Catherine Regner, Joseph Rigo, Alna Sharin Rigo, Susan Jane Regal, Megtildis Reese, I like that name, Julio Rivera, Robin Lynn Rivera, Robert Roberman, Nita Roberts, Keith Richard Chapman Robertson, Rod Roddenberry, Majel Roddenberry, Eugene Roddenberry.
Okay, we're going to take a short break in our family stories. I'd like to bring up our founder and our CEO, Charlie Chafer, to say a few words.
Thank you, Colby, and good afternoon, I think, everyone. I always get the most out of the memorial services of any of the events, even the launch that we put on, because I get to know everybody. I get to meet, if vicariously or through the families, those participants and hear their life stories. And I'm always moved and touched, and I just wouldn't miss it for the world. I apologize for being a little late today. I had to go look at the rocket on the pad and meet with Tori Bruno, the CEO of ULA, and I can report to you that everything's ready to go. The rocket's ready. Payload is ready. Range is ready. And the weather's looking good. So it is Florida, but, you know, all signs are looking very good today. I wanted to take a step back and share with you the beginnings of Celestis for just a moment. And strangely enough, the beginnings of Celestis, even though I founded the company in 1994, the beginnings of Celestis stretch back to 1982, where I worked for someone named Donald K. Deke Slayton, one of the original Mercury astronauts, and we launched the first private rocket into space from Matagorda Island, Texas in 1982. Shortly after that, a group from Florida approached Deke with it was called the Celestis Group of Melbourne, Florida. And their idea was to launch 10,000 cremated remains capsules on one of our rockets. Well, Deke loved that because we were selling rockets. But he also understood just how meaningful such a mission could be. And I carried that with me until 1995. Obviously, the folks in the 80s didn't quite get there, but I remember just how compelling the service was. And I know from hearing today just how compelling on an individual basis the service is. And I don't ever want to forget that, and I won't ever forget that this is a deeply personal mission for all of you here today and for the people that you love around the world who are watching it. But I want to do a little bit broader context, not to diminish the intensely personal level of satisfaction and fulfillment that you'll get by doing the Celestis mission. But when I formed the company, there was a broader purpose in mind. If you can cycle back, those of you that are as old as I am, to the mid-90s when we started it, there were no private tourists going to space. There were only 1 or 2 rockets available in the world. And yet, I knew that if we could find a way to involve everyone in a space mission, And why did I know that? Because when my rockets were on the launch pad and I was there and I watched it take off, I got a feeling that was impossible for me to duplicate anywhere else, that personal connection to the mission. And then when you think about a situation where Dad is on board, friends are on board, and you'll know it, when that launch lights and the liftoff occurs, you're going to have a feeling that's really hard to describe, because I know and respect that all of us here, we have our first employee on this mission, are at some level in the grief process. And we don't ever think that we'll solve that grief by this mission. But maybe we'll move you along the grief process a little bit further to where you can see fulfillment and even a little bit of joy in being able to provide this for a loved one. But my broader goal was humanity really needs to become, you've heard this before, multiplanetary. We need to move out throughout the solar system. Not because Earth is bad, but because we humans are an exploring group and we are challenged by frontiers. So I looked around and I said, well, right now a few highly trained civil servants, Phil Chapman, are the folks that are able to go to space. But what if we take everyone off the planet? What will that do for space development and space programs? And what I firmly believe is that as we are moving off the planet, we will take our memorials, our rituals, and our celebrations with us. And I can't think of anything more appropriate. So in many ways, the folks here are contributing to the very early stages of helping us as a human civilization become citizens of the solar system. And that's really the message that I have for everybody today, which is thank you. Thank you for helping move along humanity into space. And we do it through our celebrations, we do it through our memorials, and I gotta say, this ain't easy to do. I have a t-shirt that says space is hard, and it is. But to me, there's nothing more important than what we're doing here today, tomorrow, and the next day that fulfills all of us, but inspires all of us. And that's, to me, worth devoting my life to, which I have. So I want to say thank you. We couldn't do it without all of you all. I want to say thank you to ULA. What a wonderful support system they brought to this mission. I've been so impressed with the competence. And as you meet all of the ULA employees, their genuine thrill at providing this service for you is apparent. And finally, I want to say thank you to my team. We're a bunch of generalists who have figured out ways for 20 times now to do something that nobody else on the planet is doing. And again, that's not easy. Whether it's building your badges at 2 a.m. on the night before the service, or whether it's engaging with the various launch service and satellite providers that we have to, or more importantly, whether it's answering your questions. We have a lot to communicate to you, and we're trying. We think we're doing a pretty good job, but to the extent that we do anything well, it's completely because of the Celestis team that you see here. So, thank you. Thank you so much. Fills me up with great pride, and again, as a student at Georgetown University in the 70s, I probably could have done anything I wanted to do, and yet I found my way to doing this. And I can tell you that there's no more fulfilling business to be in. Yes, we are a business, but we're far beyond a business. We are believers, and we couldn't do it without you guys. So I'll let us get back to this very compelling memorial service. I want to say that I look forward to meeting all of you individually. And I just want to say from Charlie Chafer, we really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say, Charlie, from everyone here, thank you for your vision. That's the reason why we're here today. All right, I'd like to bring up the family of Robert Chapman. And they will be followed by the family of Roger Anderson Sr. and Lee Anderson.
Today I'm joined by my mother, Karen, Robert's wife, and my sister, Maddie, to come up and pay respects and celebrate an amazing, curious, hardworking man of intellect. My father was a man fascinated with what lies in the world around him and beyond. He was a chemist, a scientist, and an engineer, striving for knowledge and stories. Above all, he was a family man, one who both in life and death ensured his family was taken care of and put first. A father that cultivated in me his curiosity for the universe. We would spend hours staring up at the stars, him pointing out different constellations. We shared a common passion for science and science fiction, and as a boy, we watched Star Trek together, most specifically Star Trek Enterprise when I was growing up, which brings a whole new wealth of feeling when I think of this launch. For him to join the creator and different cast members of the original Star Trek television series, as well as astronauts, presidents, and your loved ones today, it would have absolutely blown his mind. As my father inspired curiosity in space within me, so his father did before him. My grandfather, Robert Chapman Sr., was space and science editor for the Sunday Express newspaper in London. Through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, he covered the heart of the space race. His passion for fiction also ignited him to author countless murder mystery books alongside of books on UFO accounts and atomic energy. I didn't get to know my grandfather, as he was taken from us when I was very young, but have come to learn from him and understand him through his writing. Because you see, space, science, and science fiction is a legacy for our family. And when the Enterprise finally launches into space, I will picture my father and my grandfather beside us and see their legacy continue into the cosmos. For those of you that might understand this last line, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
I just wanted to follow up with that to say it is an honor to be here. One of the things that my husband really wanted was to go to the Space Kennedy Center. It was his dream. I said we would do it when we retired. He was hoping he'd get a job at NASA when he retired. He said if it was a janitor position, he'd be more than happy. That's how much he wanted to be here. So I have to thank everybody who contributed to him coming here. His friends, his family, his co-workers realized how important this would be to Robert. Unfortunately, in January 2021, he got COVID. Unfortunately, therefore, he was on a ventilator within 4 days, and we didn't really get to talk to him or discuss ever what he wanted to do. But we know, and my children found the Celestis program, and it was just so clear to us all that this would have been his dream and more. So to everybody who contributed, I say thank you. To the Celestis team for making this happen, I say thank you.
The family for Roger Anderson Sr. and Lee Anderson.
Good afternoon. My name's Lee Anderson, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I would not be standing here if it were not for Mr. Mark B. Lee. He and I have a connection in the Comic-Con world of, there's a convention in Atlanta called Dragon Con, and that's where we met, and that's how I found out about Celestis. I also want to break with protocol for just a second. By a show of hands, how many veterans do we have in the room? Thank you for your service. Second break in protocol. Do we have any Vietnam veterans in the house? Welcome home. And finally, a unpaid infomercial. Just want to make everybody aware who may not be aware is that Neutral Zones Studios, Ray Tessie, his assistant Tina, and a couple of the cosplayers, Lisa and I believe Michelle, are in the back corner with the bridge of the Enterprise, and they're also representing the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. So if you get a chance, go by, have a conversation with them. I know you'll like it, and you can also get a photo op with the captain's chair. So my father, Roger Anderson Sr., Roger Neil Anderson Sr., he was a Vietnam veteran. And earlier this year, everybody was looking forward to a launch on May the 4th. That would give us the ultimate geek cred at Dragon Con. And especially with all the Gene Roddenberry and Majel and the rest of the cast members. Unfortunately, at the time, there was an unplanned ignition in a test article at ULA, and that delayed the launch on May the 4th. Fortunately, that opened up a window of opportunity for additional people to add their loved ones or themselves to the flight. That's how I had the opportunity to add my father to the flight. He passed in 2021, and he was a very proud veteran, and I was able to secure his DNA from the headband of the cap in front of me that he wore proudly as a Vietnam vet. To give you an idea of the man himself, he was born under very humble circumstances during the Great Depression. He was a cherished father, husband, grandfather, and great-grandfather, and he will always be remembered for his outsized personality, perpetually optimistic attitude, love for all of God's children, especially the poor and downtrodden, and his role in loving and mentoring and constantly teaching all of those around him. He enlisted in the Air Force and was an air traffic control operator enlisted, and then he had the opportunity to become an aviation cadet. And that was back before you had to have a college degree to become a pilot. Fast forward through a few things. My sister was born in Japan, my brother was born in Texas, and I was born in Michigan. Go Blue! All right, so we lived all around the country, and he flew 13 different models of fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, accumulating over 1,300 hours of flight time over his career. His duty stations included assignments in Nebraska, Texas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Japan, Michigan, Da Nang from 65 to 66, where he served as the ops officer for the Da Nang airfield, and California and Georgia. His military honors include the Bronze Star and the Air Medal with 4 Oak Leaf clusters. He has survived, or I should say, he cheated death on multiple occasions, including Agent Orange, and also surviving a 3-aircraft supersonic collision midair, where he became a member of the Caterpillar Club, which is where you deploy your chute of silk and you record 1 fewer landings than takeoffs. So after he retired, he went back to college to finish his degree, began teaching Air Force Junior RTC to high school students for 23 years. He struggled with dyslexia, but he managed to earn his Bachelor's of Business from Georgia College, now Georgia University, and ultimately a master's degree in education from Clemson. Go Tigers. Teaching thousands of cadets over those 23 years, he made a true difference in teaching those youth everything from basic hygiene principles to how to properly wear a uniform to concepts of honor, integrity, and character, how to march, and ultimately how to conduct themselves on overnight field trips representing the parents, school, and community. His unit was designated an honor unit 15 times and a meritorious unit 5 times out of the 23 years. More gratifying to him is the cadets that he served with, who he educated throughout the years. Many went on to successful careers in the military, including one who recently pinned on Brigadier General. I'll try and close this out as quick as I can. A few years back, he wrote a narrative that he emailed out to all the family members. It was called The Good Life. He says, "My wife and I have enjoyed nightfall in the Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, consumed liters of Lowenbrau in Munich, and attended Vespers in Westminster Abbey. We spent days touring the Prado Museum in Madrid, admiring the paintings of Goya, El Greco, and Velázquez. We saw Michelangelo's frescoes on the ceiling of the Vatican and the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. I snorkeled in the Mediterranean off Majorca, where I saw fish so transparent that one could see individual bones in their spines. I've picked winners at Churchill Downs, won roulette in Las Vegas, and held 4 natural aces in several draw poker games. I caught brook trout in remote streams of Labrador. I bathed with my wife in the hot springs of Mount Fujiyami and spent 11 days in Hong Kong during the Chinese New Year of 1966. I saw both Pat Summerall and William Perry play college football. I saw Hank Aaron and Willie Mays hit home runs in Atlanta. I enjoyed watching Louis Armstrong and Louis Prima play and Keely Smith sing. I've experienced the Aurora Borealis over St. John's Bay. I experienced St. John's fires, St. Elmo's fire on the windshields of both B-25 and T-33 aircraft while flying around thunderstorms. Now this is the most important part to me. As I grow older, my desire for material possessions and peer approval has diminished. I find that those things which I failed to accomplish no longer give me concern, and those things which I have done give me more and more satisfaction. Life has been very good to me. Thank you.
Good job.
The family for Susan Jane Weigel. Followed by the family for Thomas Isola.
Good afternoon. Wow. Yeah, quite a journey to get here. All the delays, and I've been waiting for this for quite a long time. To send my hummingbird to the stars. She wasn't an engineer or did anything special except for being a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a daughter, a sister. We were hoping to go to the places I used to go. I was in the Navy. For those I was really surprised to see, there's Antarctic people here. I'm an old Antarctic explorer. I was there in the 70s with the Navy. I would call her by ham, phone patch to Missouri, let her know how I was doing. We would, eventually we got married, 32 years. She's now a great-grandmother, though she didn't get a chance to see them. But we're excited to send her on her way, to be one of the first, to be one of the few, because she was always watching me go away to Persian Gulf or Indian Ocean or wherever the Navy had to send us. So with all that, I wish that her extended family could have been here, but schools, jobs, life, I was retired, so I was able to make it. I would like to appreciate her best friend, Sue, who accompanied me, and the fact that I'll be glad if I can join her down the road, but not too soon. Thank you, that's all I have.
The family for Thomas Isola. And the family for Thomas Isola will be followed by the family for Vingo Paul and Berthari Vupu.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Donald Isula. I am one of the sons of Thomas J. Isula. First off, I do want to thank once again the whole team, Charles and Mark at Celestius. Just been an incredible experience so far. And still shaking in the thought of seeing our first rocket for, I think, most of us up here in real life. YouTube doesn't do justice. As Dad always used to say, how do you get a space party? You plan it. And looking forward and all the things that he has done, he was a huge avid fan of Gunter Wendt, who was the last person to close the hatch before sending you on your way. And of course, Gene Kranz. Could have swear he had a marvelous vest collection, could compete with him. And of course, I just wanted to thank ULA as well as Northrop Grumman. And I'm sure their name might not be directly on it, but Dad might think so. Maybe Skunk Works. So thank you again for having us here, and I want to pass it to my siblings here. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Amanda. I'm Thomas's only daughter and oldest child. I thought it was okay. So my dad, Thomas Joseph Isula, was born on February 27th, 1960, in the city of Good Neighbors, Buffalo, New York. Go Bills! Thomas had an insatiable thirst for knowledge, particularly in the field of electrical engineering. At a young age, he had already replicated most experiments from one of his favorite idols, Nikola Tesla. Through the loud crack of high-voltage plasma and intense light around the garage door, his mother could do little but encourage him to be safe in the family garage-converted laboratory. In his early years, Thomas worked as a sound engineer for some of the most influential artists of our time. This ignited his passion for music and blended his love for electrical engineering in a way that would echo to his 4 children. He had a love for hi-fi audio and in particular, Macintosh amplifiers, hence the ties today. So much so that even his laboratory could not evade the playing of records softly at any available moment. Thomas also worked as a training consultant specializing in electrical maintenance and industrial automation, where he designed training programs for General Motors and the Ford Motor Company. Thomas's thirst for knowledge and inquisitiveness of electronics propelled him into the learning environment, where he would eventually go from a teaching assistant to a full-time instructor. Thomas was an educator of the highest regard, teaching the electrical engineering of tomorrow to the youth of today. His love for sharing his passion of electronics with his students and helping them achieve successful careers was his purpose, leading him to teach technical electronics and computer technology for 46 years, the longest teaching career at Erie One Bosse's in New York State. Thomas's students have gone on to work for some of the most influential and prestigious engineering and R&D firms in the world, crediting their success to his mentorship and guidance. Thomas had many passions, from wreck diving the Great Lakes, amateur radio, collecting quirky t-shirts, photography, and camping, and exploring places seldom seen. But one of his favorite things to do was volunteer at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park, where he was chief electrical engineer for over 20 years and an ensign in the Sullivan's Division U.S. Naval Sea Cadet Corps. Thomas's service and dedication to the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park earned him the title of Naval Park MacGyver and eventually the prestigious Bosun Marvin Curry Award in 2013 for his interpretation, maintenance, preservation, restoration, and love of the ships. Although he was a man of much devotion, Thomas's greatest passion of all, next to teaching, was astronomy and his love for all things NASA and space. Thomas was infatuated by space, so much so that he applied to be the first teacher in space as part of NASA's Challenger mission back in the 1980s. As my brother said, the signed Gunter Wendt photo always hung above his desk at school, and at any moment you could hear him quoting Dr. Leonard McCoy. This launch, his final adventure to the unknown, is a proper send-off for a true pioneer. Fair winds and following seas, Dad. Rest easy. We have the helm. I just wanted to say one more thing. My dad actually walked me down to the aisle a little over 2 years ago to Jupiter in the Gustav Holst Planus suite. So it's pretty cool to have that here today, and I'm just super excited that he's among all of these incredible people, space nerds, and that he'll have company to speak to. We love you, Dad. And I'm sorry, my dad knows this, but none of us could agree on something to say, so my other 2 brothers just want to say something quickly.
I would like to address my father's students watching here today, both near and far, past and present. I am Joseph Charles Isula, the youngest of my father and your teacher. Every last student he treated like family. He took great interest in each and every one of you, and even greater pride in every one of your accomplishments. Mr. Isula has prepared a path for you, laid it out. He rested well after each class and graduation, knowing full well that he has done his job. He has the full confidence that he gave you every single tool you needed to succeed. He instilled in all of us that there is no task too big, too daunting. Bits, bites, and nibbles, you will get it done. I know this firsthand from him teaching ourselves and seeing where so many of his loving students has gone. You are his life's work, and he lives on in each and every one of you, giving it your all every day, working in the largest automotive manufacturers in the world, the aeronautical industry, and scaling the tallest radio communication towers in the world, and developing your technologies to help thousands in need. Mr. Isula was more than a teacher to many of you. He was a friend, a confidant, and that spark of inspiration. My dad may not know where any of you may end up, but we, the family of your beloved teacher, Mr. Isula, have the confidence in each and every last one of you that you will do such great things. You have the knowledge, you have the tools, you have the passion and power to do such great things. With that, from our family to you, Mr. Isula's beloved students, we believe in you, and we are just as proud of you as our father was. And as my father has said for many, many years, the world is yours, so make it a good place to be. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Thomas Joseph Isula II. This is my son, Thomas Joseph Isula III, carrying on the generation here. And all I got to say is, wow, guys, we are here. It is time. And hearing your stories as I'm sitting back there, the amount of intellectual horsepower in this room and aboard this rocket, my father would be sitting back there as a wallflower in awe, just listening to everybody. So I'd just like to say, from our family to yours, we're going on this journey together. Thank you, Celestius. Thank you, ULA. Let's go for beans.
Thanks. Love the jackets and the blouses, guys.
The family for Vingo, Paul, and Bernacki Vupu. The family for Hugh Daniel and Mark Hopkins.
Hello. This actually is for Hugh Daniel. You'll see me once again for Mark Hopkins. My name is Gary Barnhart. In view of sort of introductions, Charlie and I go back to 1977 in George Washington University in a space settlements course, and that was the year I founded the Maryland Alliance for Space Colonization. So I've been around for a while, and I feel honored and privileged and quite endeared to the fact that Charlie was able to make good on this happening. Here today with Hugh Daniel, who is my friend, his sister, Leslie Hiker, and Eric, another dear friend of Hugh's. I'd like to start off by sharing a few words. The Celestis Enterprise mission, a decade in waiting from his passing, is not Hugh's first mission to space, figuratively or literally. His crewmates were test flown as part of the metaphorical crew for an earlier Celestis suborbital flight. This has led to why friends and family are gathered here today, a culminating act of remembrance for Hugh Daniel, fomented and supported by those who think spacing Hugh is a fitting memorial, a flight that seeks to bring to fruition his venture into deep space in earnest. Hugh Daniel was my friend. Somewhere in the span of the 80s, we found ourselves crossing paths at world science fiction conventions between volunteering, enjoying the conviviality of our eclectic compatriots to all hours of the night, putting on and being part of this science programming, and discussing the intersections between science fiction, space, and reality. We became fast friends. In the time, he became part of our family, endeared to my wife, children, and pussycats. Hugh was an irascible but gentle soul. His politics were libertarian, bordering on the doctrinaire, yet he had well-founded opinions on virtually everything. Even if you profoundly disagreed with him, his thoughts, far more often than not, gave cause for reflection. He was an open source software champion, lending his efforts to the Internet Engineering Task Force, the Free Swan Public Key Encryption Development, in the work of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Project Xanadu, Cyberpumps, Starstruck, amongst many. He was ever inclined to be quite pissy, holding forth on the foolishness of the Linux children and even more misguided machinations of the boys and girls in Redmond, Washington. Not to mention how hopelessly aerospace I was inclined to be, in a pejorative sense, without his guidance, that is. He cut his teeth in the VMS and Unix wars and came to be a seasoned veteran of all flavors of Linux, though his heart belonged to the promise of Debian. He was difficult in any number of ways, but when you had to face a tough networking, programming, or security challenge, there is no better hacker to have on your team in the world. Hugh was my erstwhile business partner in XISP.net, lead software architect for multiple generations of our custom IP server security gateway products, fellow entrepreneur, rocket scientist, part of our household for months at a time for many years, friendly ogre and jungle gym for my wife and I's kids, expert mischievous present wrapping consultant, chief photographer, and the only person I've ever known to roll Linux kernels for fun. He publicly challenged the world in multiple fora to take down our infrastructure, and he lent his skills to see that they could not. The XISP.net team built and fielded infrastructure more than a decade ahead of the market, thanks in no small measure to his work. Yet he had unresolved issues with what were to him the travails of terrestrial life, time cards which he could not abide, paperwork which was just administrivia, going to the doctor and dentist required an escort, money a marginally necessary inconvenience, bank accounts, egads, cell phone contracts, you've got to be kidding. Authority in all forms was to be questioned. He was once called out as my bodyguard, adorned in what was referred to as a Scottish war kilt. It was argued that the two of us were a caricature of an old married couple. Suffice it to say that a great many waterfowl metaphorically lost their innocence as we verbally crossed swords. When I found his doppelganger, a male greeting card model adorned in pink hot pants, mischievous grin, offering this as evidence that he may be secretly living a double life, after several weeks he even spoke to me again. He even stoically suffered through the mysterious quote he received for a state-of-the-art 6-foot-tall, red-headed female animatronic in good humor. Hugh found joy in programming, cryptography, computer hardware, dancing the time warp again, teaching, science fiction, eating almost anything, kilts, space, children, photography, music, everything, even his own fervently held. He was effectively a one-man tough room, ever willing to question everything, even his own fervently held beliefs from time to time. He reveled in protesting every element of the security theater he encountered. He was ever ready to hold forth on any aspect of life, the universe, and everything, towel in hand. He lived life engaged in the moment. When pressed for what he wanted most, he had a list. 1, a starship. 2, the company of a very smart, tall, beautiful, red-haired woman. And 3, more milk and cookies. Godspeed, Hugh Daniel.
I'm just checking. Oh, that's not the same photo that was up there before. Interesting. Oh, well, I had a comment on that. You can probably see from that photo that Hugh liked to wear things kind of like this. This is why I'm in this particular dress. This is pretty typical for what he would wear. And I'd like you to imagine him, considerably larger than me, shambling around the halls of a science fiction convention. Shambling because he's got a half a dozen children hanging from his arms and legs. Kids just loved him. And one of the things that he liked to do at those science fiction conventions, he and I would pack the car. He was living with me in my geodesic dome in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We'd pack the car with all the tools that would be needed and tons and tons of old electronic junk for a panel that he often ran at science fiction conventions called Dr. Destructo. And he would give the kids the tools and the junk and teach them how to take it apart and find inside of it magnets and motors and things that you could figure out how they worked. At these panels, he always insisted on giving at least one child a gun, an electron gun from a cathode ray tube, showing them how to safely discharge the tube and let the air back into it. And they may not have become engineers just from this one Dr. Destructo panel, but I'm sure that he laid the spark for numerous people to become engineers today. Thinking about kids and science fiction conventions, long before I met Hugh, I was going to Star Trek conventions. And at one, I remember listening to James Doohan speaking. And in the Q&A afterwards, a child earnestly approached the mic and asked, "What does the crew do during the commercials?" Now, Scotty had a good answer for it, which unfortunately I don't remember. The question was far more interesting. And now it's time for Scotty, Uhura, McCoy, number one and the great bird of the galaxy, to go on one more commercial break. Hugh and the rest of this Enterprise mission will join them to boldly go where no living person has gone before. Thank you, Celestis and ULA, for this opportunity.
So 2 years goes by fast. I've been with Celestis for 2 years now. And when I first got there, I was introduced to a name named Richard Brastad. He was Celestis' first employee. And when I got there, he was at the end of his fight with cancer. So I only got to know Richard for a short time. But in that short time, he made a significant impact on me, and he was probably one of the most sweetest, humble people I've ever met in my life. So it was an honor to only know him for a few months. But we'd like to honor Richard now. His sister recorded a tribute to him. Keith?
To my late dearest brother Richard, you were a warrior. You fought so very hard. I fought alongside you every step of the way, every minute throughout this journey. You departed this earth on July 26, 2022 at 4:09 a.m. You showed strength, courage, and hope along the way. You bounced back several times when things got bad. You beat the odds and outlived the estimated time predicted. I admired your courage and determination to beat this disease. You fought and didn't lay down your sword and shield until the very end. You told me when you were close to the end that you were at peace and okay. You knew it was time to lay down your armor, and when you asked me if I was okay, you even apologized when I broke down. You knew this was going to be hard for me and didn't want me to hurt. What an amazing and beautiful human being you were. You will be greatly missed by so many. I was so grateful I had the chance to say goodbye and tell you how much I loved you. You were taken too soon. It had been years since you had seen our dear friend Kelly, and yet you found the strength lying in the hospital bed for a fist bump with an old friend. The love you showed others came from the heart of a person who had an innate love for humanity. The sacrificial love we bestow on others is a reflection of God's love for us, and you demonstrated that. You were willfully blind to the faults of those you loved and cherished. You didn't judge. You accepted all human beings unconditionally, no matter their past, present, or future. That, my brother, is love. But I know I will see you again. Death is only a comma, not a period. I have to trust God's divine plan in all of this. It was time for you to lay down your battle gear, time for him to call you home. You were blessed to be a part of an amazing team at Celestis who dearly loved you, and you loved as well, working in the space industry with an amazing company that you so loved. You were where you wanted to be. Now, as we send you off into the deep blue final frontier, how amazing that you are a part of what you were always so fascinated with and witnessed in your career, dreamt of as a child looking through your telescope in the front yard as you explained to me what you were gazing at. We are here, my brother, your family, friends, and coworkers, witnessing your final journey. I bet you are talking to Jesus now and discussing the stars and planets and constellations you so dearly love. I hope you are soaring among the stars. Yes, my brother, he made those with you in mind for you to enjoy. What an amazing Father we have. You are walking on streets of gold, no more pain or sorrow. You are healed, at peace, at rest. It is hard for those of us left behind without you, but it gives me comfort to know you are with our Father in heaven, and I will see you again. You were always there for me during good times and bad. I will miss you so very much. My prayer was answered that you didn't suffer in the end and minimally along the way. Goodbye for now, my brother. You are forever in our hearts. Thank you, Abba Father, for sharing him with us. Jesus, we give you all the praise and honor and glory. Watch over him, Lord. Hug him for me. Tell him I love him. Until we meet again, you, my sweet brother, are home. Lovingly, with all my heart, your sister Barbara. Romans 8:38, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord.
We had a few other families that didn't let us know in advance they wanted to speak. They changed their mind while they were here, and that is perfectly okay. They just won't have their loved ones behind us. But I would like to call up the family of Simon K. Eller to speak. And the family of Simon K. Eller will be followed by the family of Marjorie Malcolm Streeter. You know, as they come forward, we're getting pretty close to the end of the Tranquility flight portion, so we'll be taking a break soon. Did I say Tranquility? Thank you. I apologize. Enterprise.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to keep you here longer. I'm sure everyone's getting... Sorry. Hello. Sorry to keep everyone here longer. I'm sure everyone's getting tired and hungry. I know I am. I didn't plan anything, obviously, and it was just listening to everyone else talk that made me feel like I wanted to say some words. I'm talking about my dad, Simon Eller. Where to start? He was born in 1965 in England. He was a dual citizen, American and British. He, growing up, was very interested in electronics, tech, things like that. He worked in a hi-fi system as a teenager, and then he joined the Air Force when he was in his 20s. Sorry. He retired in late 90s, and sadly last year he passed away from pancreatic cancer. He was a very weird man. And I didn't really know what to say, but the only thing that I could think of to kind of describe his weirdness was a poem that I found on his phone after he died. Sorry, give me a moment just to find it. Sorry.
This is what you get for not being prepared.
Yeah, I should be more prepared. Okay. The poem that I found on his phone was about his tooth that fell out. He called it Ode to Tooth. It says, pulled out a piece of my tooth tonight, been there for 55 plus years, doing its thing to chew up my food ready to swallow. Poor tooth, all these decades past, only to be pried out with a cheap pair of Chinese tweezers fit for another purpose. What a fitting end to a long, purposeful life of indentured servitude. What must it feel like to be a tooth? Your whole life grinding away continuously, only to be discarded at will without any afterthought. I commend you, tooth, for a life of slavery to food, and I respect you for your tremendous strength throughout the years. Thank you for being there for me, only to complain when you are so worn out and broken you have no choice. Thank you, tooth. You won't be forgotten. He always loved space. He used to watch the space station just for hours. He loves Star Trek, so I'm so happy he's going to be on this and going into deep space. And one of the things that he said, he didn't care about being buried, cremated, anything. He just said he wanted to go into space when he died. And in a video that he did before he died, where he talked about that being his only wish, he said maybe his DNA will end up somewhere in deep space and he'll land on a planet and the aliens will find him and there will be a planet of Simon clones. Thank you.
The family for Marjorie Malcolm Streeter, followed by the family of Gilbert Lewis Pico.
Hi, my name's Wendy Bailey. I'm Marjorie Malcolm Streeter's daughter. She was beautiful, brilliant, passionately opposed to cruelty and injustice in all forms, endlessly kind to people and animals, including one random moth named Elmer who traveled with us for many years. She was a gifted writer of novels and poetry, a classically trained soprano, talented artist, but she wished she had been an astrophysicist, or that I had. She hung a solar system mobile over my crib. She used to contribute her home PC time to the SETI project, and this was when it was a 386 processor. Anyway, one of the last books she read was by Michio Kaku on string theory. When she was a toddler, she traveled the world, so she made sure that as a child, I moved around the world too. We lived in Australia, Singapore, Nepal, India, Thailand, Morocco. In fact, she pulled a trailer through the Mont Blanc tunnel in the Alps in a blizzard with a Volkswagen. We saw Apollo Haddad, as they called it, Apollo 11 in Morocco. We had to find a place that had a TV and across town, and we got to see the landing. It was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen, and right after that, we were able to get free tickets to the first Pan Am passenger shuttle. That didn't work out, but she loved science fiction as much as she loved space and science. She had the bookshelves of all the old science fiction paperbacks and the old magazines like Astounding and Analog. And she wrote some science fiction. And she used to get me up out of bed. It was a little late at night for me where we were in Australia then, to watch Star Trek, the original show. And we watched every show together from then through 2022 when she died. In fact, the last Valentine I made her was a picture of an actor on Discovery who she thought was handsome, and she framed it. So I was an only child. She was a single mother. She was the love of my life. We didn't know that we could do this when we discussed things. But there was this horrible moment, in a hospital when you're told to make arrangements. Looked you guys up. I was grieving and not very functional. And then two amazing people, Christiana and Faith, at various times, just took me by hand. They would keep calling me when I would forget deadlines, when I wouldn't open my mail. They were truly amazing. In fact, today, as we said, I didn't remember to sign up for this, and I ran back to Christiana, and she made it so. So I will never stop missing my mother. And, quite honestly, this journey is for me, to comfort me. But I think it would excite her, too. And as others have said, I think she'll have great, passionate conversations along the way. So thank you all. Thank you.
The family for Gilbert Lewis Pico, followed by the family for Martin Caden.
Sorry, boss.
It's okay. Hi, how are you? Fantastic, how are you?
Pretty good.
It's all yours.
This was unexpected. My sister's probably watching on live and said, hey, Roger needs to talk. So Gilbert was kind of like a twin to me. Even though he was 3 years older, we kind of thought alike. And he was into space, telescopes, computer science, and he got that from our dad, who, I guess I should say I'm representing the McCoy family, because my sister's side, our dad is going up also. He worked for Teledyne Ryan Aeronautical, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I guess he retired eventually in the 90s. He worked with the Apollo, the Gemini, the Space Shuttle, the military drones. My brother, Andres, who's alive, commander in the, retired commander, used to shoot down the drones my dad would make. And his son is coming out tonight to be here with us. He's a commander in the Navy. He also shot down drones that my dad made. But Gilbert, we all like space, Star Trek, and quoting from Star Trek. Hopefully there's no copyright problem with that. I guess everyone here, our loved ones, are going where no man has gone before, out into the unknown. I guess that's it for now.
Very good.
I bought this one. I found out that he was going to be launching up in outer space.
The family for Martin Caden, followed by the family of Francis Klein. You're welcome.
I'm Dee Dee Caden. My husband was Martin Caden. This is going to take a little while because he was quite an amazing man. Martin Caden was an author, a pilot, radio and television personality, and a global adventurer. According to Wikipedia, which is wrong, he was the author of over 150 books and 4,000 magazine articles. He's recognized internationally as an authority on astronautics and aviation. He was a commercial pilot, restoring and flying World War II bombers, fighters, trainers. His most famous restoration was his Yonkers Ju-52 Iron Annie, a 3-engine German bomber that is now the flagship of Lufthansa Airlines. And the most amazing crew chief is here with us today, my dear friend Terry Ritter and his wife Becky. Martin changed the camaraderie and the fabric of the space program with his book Marooned, in which Russians rescued our American astronauts. He was a space pioneer in the 1950s as part of the Wernher von Braun team at the Space Coast, on the scene and behind the scenes for every manned flight into space. Martin broadcast the launches of Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and published the book, The Astronauts. Martin served in various capacities as a reporter, broadcaster, pilot, and consultant to the U.S. government. He changed the language of the world and inspired the medical bionics industry with his book, Cyborg, which became the popular series, The $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. Martin brought humanity to conflict in his book, Samurai, which was the first book ever telling the story of a decorated Japanese flying ace. The sonnet, High Flight, was written by John Gillespie Jr. and was first published in the book, Samurai. And the last line says it all. I put out my hand and I touched the face of God.
We got one more, but you're already here, so go ahead, come on. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry I was up here earlier, but when I saw my wife's face, Susan, my name's Richard Regal, I kind of froze up. I wanted you to know that she was born on a farm in northeast Missouri, and she could see the galaxies every time she walked out in the evening. I met her on top of Pikes Peak, so we were halfway to the stars there in 1958, where we met our families. We were the only ones there, and it was 20 years later, I married her. She never moved, but we moved all over the country. I was in the Navy, and her biggest challenge was putting up with me. She had the kids, she had the job, she had the house, she had all the work, and I was overseas. So we were Trekkies. We grew up with the space race. Her favorite, she would have married John F. Kennedy, except for he was already married. So through all that went on, she was no engineer, she was no scientist. She left that up to me as an electronic technician in the Navy. Assembly required for everything she bought. But for her, this mission is for her to go boldly out there ahead of the rest of us to lead the way so I may follow someday. Thank you.
And finally, the family for Francis Klein.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm Rachel, Frank's daughter. My mom is also here, as is my partner, and hopefully my dad's sister is watching online. My mom and dad met when he was a physics PhD student at Catholic University. My dad really loved ice cream, so on their first date they got a banana split. They grew together and loved each other for over 40 years, building a shared life, home, and family. Dad loved science and nature from an early age, and he shared that love with me, and he loved that I loved it too. He showed me Halley's Comet through his telescope. He helped me build my own telescope, and we built a cloud chamber in the dark room downstairs so that we could see cosmic rays. And yes, he loved Star Trek. We're all flawed human beings, and my dad would never have said that he was perfect, except for all those times that he said he was perfect. But even imperfect, he was amazing. His smile was so big and so genuine, and he loved his family, and he loved the world so much that he couldn't stop taking pictures of it. I'm not religious, and neither was Dad, so I don't believe that he's looking down on us from above or looking up at us from below, and I don't believe that I'll ever see him again. But even though he's gone, he'll still always be with us, and as he takes this journey and goes beyond the final frontier, he takes with him all our love. It's weird when someone you love passes away. You think that they'll be right around the corner. that they're just about to call, but it doesn't happen. Over time, you realize that they're not going to call ever again. And over time, you learn to keep living your life and to keep eating, keep sleeping, keep laughing. And my dad would not begrudge us our laughter. He had a super goofy sense of humor. Somebody earlier mentioned dad jokes. Yeah, that. So I'll just close with this one. Heisenberg was driving down the road one day, and a cop pulls him over. And Heisenberg stops, and he rolls down the window, and the cop walks up to the car. And the cop says, "Sir, do you know how fast you were going?" And Heisenberg replies, "No, but I know where I am." Thank you.
So that's going to conclude our portion of the Enterprise Flight Memorial Service. Again, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of everyone at Celestis for being here. I hope you enjoyed it.
you.